A tech billionaire humiliates a defenseless waitress by shaving her head in front of hundreds of elite guests, thinking he's untouchable, thinking no one will care, thinking there will be no consequences. But then the ballroom doors open, and her mafia boss husband walks in. What happens next doesn't just destroy a man, it destroys an entire empire, exposes a corrupt system, and proves that some women have protectors you don't see coming until it's already too late. If you love stories of revenge, justice, and powerful mafia romance, subscribe now and hit that notification bell, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Naomi Winters never imagined her life would shatter over a glass of wine. She was exhausted, working her second double shift that week at the prestigious Belmont Club, a place where billionaires dined on caviar while she survived on instant noodles and hope. Her younger brother, Daniel, needed surgery. The medical bills were crushing. She couldn't afford to lose this job. So when she accidentally bumped into Julian Hargrove, tech mogul, media darling, man worth $4.2 billion, and spilled Chateau Margaux all over his pristine white suit jacket, she froze. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry." But Julian wasn't interested in apologies. What happened next would be filmed by a dozen smartphones, shared across social media, and become the catalyst for one of the most spectacular falls from grace the city had ever seen. Because while Julian Hargrove thought he was teaching a clumsy waitress a lesson, he had just declared war on the wrong man's wife. Terry Phillips doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. And when you hurt what belongs to him, you don't just lose. You cease to exist. The only question is, how long will it take? Naomi Winters had been on her feet for 11 hours straight. Her lower back ached. Her feet throbbed in the cheap black flats she'd bought at a discount store 3 months ago. The skin on her heels had blistered, then calloused, then blistered again. But she couldn't complain. She needed this job. She needed every single dollar. Daniel's surgery was scheduled for next month, and the hospital wouldn't operate without a deposit. $30,000. Naomi had saved $18,000 by working doubles, triples, sacrificing sleep and any semblance of a social life. The Belmont Club paid well, very well, especially on nights like this when the ultra-wealthy gathered for their exclusive charity galas. Tips alone could net her $500 if she smiled enough, stayed invisible enough, anticipated needs before they were spoken. "Table 12 needs more champagne," Sienna Blake hissed as she rushed past, her blonde ponytail swinging. Sienna had worked at Belmont for 3 years and knew every unspoken rule. "And for God's sake, don't make eye contact with Julian Hargrove. He's in a mood." Naomi nodded, grabbed 2 bottles of Dom Perignon from the service bar, and navigated through the glittering ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Women dripped in diamonds. Men wore watches worth more than Naomi's annual salary. She felt invisible here, a ghost in a black uniform, existing only to serve. Table 12 was in the corner, prime real estate with a view of the city skyline. Julian Hargrove sat at the head, surrounded by 5 other men in expensive suits. Tech executives, venture capitalists, men who shaped industries with a single phone call. Naomi had seen Julian before. Everyone had. His face was plastered across magazine covers. The billionaire disruptor. Tech's golden boy. Hargrove Industries. The future of innovation. In person, he was shorter than she expected, maybe 5'9", with thinning blonde hair slicked back and a smile that never quite reached his pale blue eyes. "Gentlemen," Naomi said softly, approaching from Julian's left. "More champagne?" One of the men, silver-haired, late 50s, nodded without looking at her. Naomi began pouring, her movements practiced and precise. That's when it happened. A woman at the adjacent table stood abruptly, her chair sliding backward. The edge caught Naomi's ankle. She stumbled, just barely, but it was enough. The champagne bottle tilted. The liquid arced through the air in what felt like slow motion and splashed directly across Julian Hargrove's pristine, white Brioni suit jacket. The table went silent. Naomi's heart stopped. "Oh my God," she gasped, setting the bottle down with shaking hands. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Julian stood slowly. Champagne dripped from his lapels. His face had gone completely white, then red. "You clumsy bitch," he said quietly. The words hit like a slap. Naomi flinched, already reaching for napkins. "Sir, please, Auntie, do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" Julian's voice was rising now, drawing attention from surrounding tables. "Do you? $25,000. Naomi felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I'll pay for the cleaning. I'll—" "Cleaning?" Julian laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think cleaning will fix this?" He turned to his companions, gesturing at his ruined jacket. "This is what happens when you let incompetent people serve their betters. This is what happens when standards drop." "Julian," one of the men murmured uncomfortably. "It was an accident." "An accident." Julian's eyes were wild now. He grabbed Naomi's wrist, hard enough to bruise. "No, this was negligence. This was disrespect." "Sir, please," Naomi whispered. "You're hurting me." But Julian wasn't listening. He was scanning the room, and his eyes landed on something across the ballroom. A portable grooming station set up for a charity beard-shaving fundraiser earlier in the evening. Electric clippers sat on the counter. Something shifted in Julian's expression, something cruel and calculated. "You want to make this right?" he said softly, dangerously. "You want to show everyone here that actions have consequences?" Naomi's stomach dropped. "What? What do you mean?" Julian dragged her toward the grooming station. Naomi tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. Other guests were watching now. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious. None intervened. "Sir, please," Naomi's voice cracked. Julian grabbed the clippers. They buzzed to life with a mechanical whir. "Maybe," Julian said, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom, "you'll remember to be more careful after this." "No." Naomi's plea died as Julian pressed the clippers to her scalp. The first strip of hair fell away. Naomi felt it. Felt the vibration against her skull. Felt the sudden coolness of exposed skin. Felt her beautiful dark curls tumbling down her shoulders and landing on the marble floor like dying birds. She was frozen, paralyzed by humiliation and shock. Julian didn't stop. He made another pass, then another. Laughter rippled through parts of the crowd. Smartphones appeared. Someone was filming. Naomi's vision blurred with tears. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stand there as this man, this billionaire, this person of power and influence, violated her in front of 300 people. When he finally stopped, Naomi's head was shaved clean on one side, patches of stubble on the other. She looked like something broken, something destroyed. Julian tossed the clippers onto the counter and wiped his hands on a towel. "Let that be a lesson." he announced to the room. Actions have consequences. Some people applauded. Naomi wanted to die. Sienna was suddenly there, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, trying to lead her away. But Naomi's legs wouldn't work. She just stood there, trembling, pieces of her hair scattered at her feet. That's when the ballroom doors opened. The temperature in the room dropped. Terry Phillips walked in. Phillips was not a man who made entrances. He was a man who changed atmospheres. 6'3", broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and eyes the color of Arctic ice. His suit was Tom Ford, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, a white silk pocket square, shoes polished to mirrors. He moved with the kind of quiet confidence that came from knowing you were the most dangerous person in any room. The Belmont Club was his. Every brick, every chandelier, every staff member. He'd bought it 5 years ago through a shell corporation and used it for exactly these kinds of events. Places where the city's elite gathered, where information flowed like wine, where leverage could be collected and stored for later use. He'd been in a meeting across town when Vincent Castellano had called. "Boss," Vincent's voice had been tight, "you need to get to Belmont, now." Phillips never rushed, but he'd made an exception. Now, as he scanned the ballroom, his eyes landed on the grooming station, on the crowd gathered around it, on the woman with the shaved head and tear-stained face, on Naomi, his wife. Everything inside Phillips went very, very still. Their marriage was a secret. It had to be. Naomi lived a separate life. Her small apartment in Queens, her waitressing jobs, her regular existence. It was the only way to keep her safe from his world, from his enemies, from the violence that followed men like him. She'd wanted to keep working, wanted to maintain her independence, wanted to help her brother without using his money. Phillips had respected that, had protected her from a distance, had made sure no one knew that the woman serving drinks was married to the man who controlled half the city's underground. But he'd failed tonight. He'd failed to protect her. Phillips crossed the ballroom floor. People moved out of his way instinctively, sensing something primal and dangerous in his approach. Julian Hargrove was laughing with his companions, still riding the high of his public humiliation. He didn't notice Phillips until the shadow fell across their table. "Naomi," Phillips said quietly. She looked up. Her eyes, those beautiful brown eyes he'd fallen in love with 3 years ago, were devastated, destroyed. But when she saw him, something sparked. Recognition, relief, love. "Terry," she whispered. The use of his first name made several people glance up sharply. Julian frowned, confused. Phillips removed his suit jacket and draped it over Naomi's shoulders, covering her uniform, covering her exposed scalp. Then he turned to look at Julian Hargrove. "Do you know who I am?" Phillips asked. His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. Julian's frown deepened. "Should I?" Terry Phillips. The name hung in the air. Recognition dawned slowly on Julian's face. Then confusion. Then the first flicker of fear. The owner of the Belmont Club," Phillips finished. "This building. These cameras." He gestured around the ballroom. "Every person wearing a uniform here answers to me." Julian's face had gone pale. Look, if this is about the waitress." "Her name," Phillips interrupted, "is Naomi Winters." "Right, Naomi, I'm sorry, but she spilled wine on a $25,000. She's also my wife." The words landed like a bomb. Julian froze. His companions froze. The entire ballroom seemed to freeze. Your wife? Julian stammered. Phillips didn't answer. He simply looked at Julian with those ice-cold eyes, and Julian understood, perhaps for the first time in his privileged, consequence-free life, that he had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. "Mr. Phillips," Julian said quickly, "I didn't know. If I had known—" "If you had known," Phillips said softly, "you wouldn't have cared. You would have found another excuse to humiliate someone you thought was powerless, someone you thought couldn't fight back." "No, that's not—" "Vincent!" A man materialized from the crowd. Vincent Castellano, 6 foot, muscular, with a scar running from his left eyebrow to his jawline. Phillips's enforcer, his right hand. "Get Naomi home," Phillips said without looking away from Julian. "Make sure she has everything she needs." "Yes, boss." Vincent offered his arm to Naomi. She hesitated, looking at Phillips. "Go," he said gently. "I'll be home soon." Naomi nodded and let Vincent lead her toward the exit. As she passed Julian's table, she didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him. She simply walked away with her head high despite everything. When the doors closed behind her, Phillips turned his full attention to Julian. "You have 48 hours, Phillips said quietly. Julian blinked. 48 hours for what? "To put your affairs in order." I don't understand." "You will." Phillips turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted like water. Julian stood there, his expensive suit still damp with champagne, his face pale, his hands trembling. Someone at the table laughed nervously. "He's bluffing. What's he going to do, right?" But Julian couldn't shake the feeling in his gut, the certainty that his life had just ended, and the dying would take exactly 48 hours. He had no idea how right he was. Detective Mary Bradford's phone rang at 6:47 a.m. She rolled over in bed, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. She almost declined, then changed her mind. "Bradford." "Detective Bradford." The voice was male, calm, educated. "My name is Terry Phillips. I believe we have a mutual interest in Julian Hargrove." Mary sat up so fast she nearly dropped her phone. Terry Phillips, the ghost. The rumor. The man who ran half the city's underground operations, yet had never been arrested, never been indicted, barely even photographed. "How did you get this number?" Mary demanded. "The same way I get everything, detective. Resources." A pause. "I'm calling because I have something you want. Evidence against Hargrove. Financial crimes. Labor violations. Bribery. All documented. All admissible." Mary's heart raced. She'd been investigating Julian Hargrove for 3 years, ever since a whistleblower had contacted her about worker exploitation at Hargrove Industries. But every lead had evaporated. Every witness had recanted. Julian had lawyers, money, and political connections. Mary had nothing but suspicion and stubbornness. "Why would you help me?" she asked carefully. "Because last night, Julian Hargrove assaulted my wife in front of 300 witnesses. Because he's a man who believes power makes him untouchable. Because I'm going to prove him wrong." Mary stood, pacing her small bedroom. "If you have evidence, why not handle this yourself? We both know you have resources." "I do," Phillips agreed. "But this time, I want it done legally. I want his fall to be public, documented, and permanent. I want his legacy destroyed in a way that even his money can't rebuild." "That's quite a change from your usual methods." "My wife asked me not to kill him." Phillips sounded almost amused. "So I'm improvising." Mary grabbed her laptop. "What kind of evidence are we talking about?" Financial records showing systematic tax fraud, employee testimonies of harassment and wage theft, security footage of bribes being paid to city officials, bank records linking Hargrove Industries to 3 shell companies used for money laundering. Mary's fingers flew across the keyboard. Send it. Already done. Check your encrypted email. Password is Justice for Naomi. Capital J, capital F, capital N. Mary opened her laptop. The email was there. She typed the password. Files began downloading. Hundreds of them. Jesus, she breathed. Detective Bradford, Phillips said. In 48 hours, I'm going to start applying pressure. Legal pressure, financial pressure, social pressure. By the time I'm done, Julian Hargrove will be exactly where he should be, in a federal prison cell. But I need you to build the case. Make it airtight. Make it inescapable. Why 48 hours? Because that's how long I told him he had. Mary should have objected. Should have told him she didn't work with criminals, didn't accept evidence from unknown sources, didn't coordinate with mafia bosses. But she'd spent 3 years watching Julian Hargrove destroy lives. 3 years collecting pieces that never quite fit together. Now, she had the whole puzzle. I'll need witness protection for anyone who testifies, she said. Already arranged. And I'm going to need access to Belmont Club security footage from last night. I'll have it delivered within the hour. Mary hesitated. Phillips, why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just about your wife. Silence. Then, men like Hargrove believe wealth equals immunity. They hurt people because they can, because no one stops them. Someone has to stop them, detective. Today, that someone is us. The line went dead. Mary stood there for a long moment, then made a call. This is Bradford. I need to convene a task force. Target is Julian Hargrove. Charges include tax fraud, money laundering, assault, and labor violations. We move in 48 hours. She hung up and opened the first file. It was going to be a long day. It was going to be a beautiful day. Julian Hargrove woke up to his world ending. It started with his CFO calling at 7:15 a.m. Julian, we have a problem. The IRS just froze all corporate accounts. They're claiming we're under investigation for… What? What investigation? Tax fraud. They have… Jesus, Julian, they have everything. Every deduction we fudged. Every offshore account. Every… Julian hung up and immediately called his lawyer. Voicemail. He tried his PR team. Voicemail. His second-in-command. Voicemail. By 8 o'clock a.m., federal agents were walking into Hargrove Industries headquarters with boxes and warrants. By 9 o'clock a.m., 3 major investors had publicly withdrawn their support. By 10 o'clock a.m., the board called an emergency meeting to discuss leadership concerns. By 11 o'clock a.m., the video went viral. Someone, Julian never found out who, had compiled footage from last night. Multiple angles, high definition. Julian shaving Naomi's head while she cried. Julian laughing. Julian wiping his hands like he'd just taken out trash. The caption read, Billionaire Julian Hargrove publicly assaults waitress over spilled wine. Within 3 hours, it had 17 million views. Within 6 hours, Justice for Naomi was trending worldwide. Julian watched the comments scroll past. This man is a monster. Imagine thinking you have the right to do this to another human being. I'm canceling every Hargrove product I own. Someone needs to arrest this psychopath. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, activists, angry customers. Former employees suddenly willing to go on record about his behavior. Rebecca Thorne, an investigative journalist from The Times, published an article at 2:00 p.m. titled, "The Billionaire Who Tortures Waitresses. What Else is Julian Hargrove Hiding?" The article was devastating. It detailed decades of labor violations, employees forced to work unpaid overtime, hostile work environments, harassment complaints buried, whistleblowers silenced. It quoted 15 former employees by name. It cited documents, financial records, emails, internal memos. Julian read it twice, his hands shaking. Where had she gotten this information? His lawyer finally called back at 3:00 p.m. "Julian, do not speak to anyone. Do not post anything online. Do not fix this," Julian hissed. "That's what I pay you for." "I can't fix this. The evidence against you is, I've never seen anything this comprehensive. It's like someone spent years building a case and then just handed it to the feds." Julian's blood went cold. "You have 48 hours, Phillips." This was Phillips. "I want to meet with him," Julian said suddenly. "With who?" "Terry Phillips." Silence on the other end. Then, "Julian, that's not a good idea." "I don't care if it's a good idea. Get me a meeting." The lawyer sighed. "I'll make some calls." By 6:00 p.m., Julian's entire world had shifted. His company's stock had dropped 42%. His face was on every news channel. Protesters had gathered outside Hargrove Industries headquarters with signs reading, "Jail Julian," and "Assault is not a joke." His father called at 7:00 p.m. "Julian," Leonard Hargrove's voice was cold. "The family is releasing a statement condemning your actions. You're being removed from the trust." "Dad, you can't." "I can, and I am. What you did was barbaric, unacceptable. We will not be associated with you." The line went dead. Julian sat in his penthouse, 42 floors above Manhattan, and realized he was alone. Utterly alone. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Penthouse lobby. Midnight. Come alone." Julian stared at it. He knew who it was from, and he knew he had no choice but to go. The lobby of Phillips's building was marble and chrome, expensive and impersonal. Julian arrived at 11:58 p.m., flanked by 2 private security guards he'd hired that afternoon. Men with military backgrounds. Men who were supposed to make him feel safe. Vincent Castellano met them at the elevator. "The guards stay here," Vincent said flatly. "Like hell," one of the guards started. Vincent didn't move, didn't blink, just looked at the man until the guard took an involuntary step backward. Julian swallowed. "It's fine. Wait here." The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. Julian's palms were sweating. His heart hammered against his ribs. The doors opened into a massive living space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Minimalist furniture. A bar in the corner. Terry Phillips stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out at the glittering skyline. "Mr. Hargrove," he said without turning around, "thank you for coming." "You left me no choice," Julian said, trying to sound brave. "No," Phillips agreed. "I didn't." He turned then, and Julian was struck again by those cold, calculating eyes. "Would you like a drink?" "I want you to stop." "Stop what?" "Whatever you're doing. The investigations, the media, I'm not doing anything illegal, Mr. Hargrove. I simply provided evidence of your crimes to the appropriate authorities." Julian's jaw clenched. "I'll pay whatever you want. Name your price." Phillips smiled, a thin, humorless expression. You can't afford me. Everyone has a price. Do they? Phillips walked to the bar and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. Tell me, what's the price for humiliating my wife? For violating her in front of hundreds of people? For treating her like garbage because you thought she was powerless? I didn't know. You didn't care. Phillips took a sip. That's the problem, Julian. You've lived your entire life never caring about consequences because you've never faced any. Well, you're facing them now. I'll apologize. Publicly. You'll do nothing, Phillips interrupted. Because by this time tomorrow, you won't have a platform. Your company will vote you out. Your assets will be frozen. Your reputation will be destroyed. And 48 hours from now, Detective Mary Bradford will arrest you on 17 felony charges. Julian's legs felt weak. He grabbed the back of a chair for support. You can't do this. I already have. I'll fight it. With what money? What lawyers? What support? Phillips set down his glass. Julian, you're not listening. It's over. The empire you built on exploitation and cruelty is gone. The name you thought would protect you is now synonymous with everything people hate about wealth inequality. What do you want from me? Nothing. Phillips walked toward the elevator. I wanted you to understand why this is happening. I wanted you to know that actions have consequences, real ones. And I wanted you to spend your last free night understanding that you did this to yourself. He pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. Good night, Mr. Hargrove. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. Julian stood there, trembling, as the elevator doors closed. He made it back to his penthouse at 1:30 a.m. and immediately made a call. I need a problem solved, he told the voice on the other end. What kind of problem? The permanent kind. Julian gave them a name, Terry Phillips. The voice quoted a price. Julian agreed, without hesitation. Consider it done, the voice said. Julian hung up and poured himself a drink. If Phillips wanted war, he'd give him war. What Julian didn't know was that the assassin he'd just hired had worked for Phillips for 8 years, and the phone call had been recorded. Mary Bradford stood in front of her task force at 8:00 a.m., a whiteboard covered in Julian Hargrove's crimes behind her. We have enough, she said. Tax fraud, money laundering, labor violations, bribery, assault, and as of 3 hours ago, conspiracy to commit murder. One of the junior detectives raised his hand. Murder? Mary played the recording. Julian's voice, clear and damning. I need a problem solved. The permanent kind. The room went silent. He tried to have Terry Phillips killed, Mary continued. The attempt failed because the contractor was actually working for Phillips, but the crime still counts. We're adding it to the charges. When do we move? Someone asked. Today, 3 times. Hargrove is holding a press conference to address the allegations. We're going to arrest him on live television. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. But we do this by the book, Mary warned. Every procedure followed. Every right is respected. I want this case to be airtight. No appeals. No technicalities. When Julian Hargrove goes to prison, he stays there. At 2:45 p.m., Mary and 6 federal agents assembled outside the Four Seasons Hotel where Julian's press conference was being held. Inside, Julian stood at a podium in front of 50 reporters. He'd hired a crisis management team to help him craft a statement. The plan was to position himself as a victim, misunderstood, attacked by vindictive forces, painted unfairly by social media. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian began, I stand before you today to address the vicious and unfounded attacks on my character. Mary watched from the back of the room, arms crossed. am not the monster they're making me out to be. Yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I overreacted, but I am prepared to make amends. Mary glanced at her watch. 3:30. She nodded to her team. They moved forward. Believe in accountability. And Julian Hargrove. Julian stopped mid-sentence, turned. Mary stood 10 feet away, badge held high. I'm Detective Mary Bradford with the NYPD in cooperation with federal authorities. You're under arrest for tax fraud, money laundering, labor violations, assault, bribery, and conspiracy to commit murder. Cameras flashed. Reporters surged forward. Julian's face went white. You can't. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Mary continued, approaching with handcuffs. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney... She cuffed him while the cameras recorded every second. Julian's lawyer appeared from nowhere. This is outrageous. You're arresting him during a press conference. Seemed appropriate, Mary said dryly, given how much he likes public humiliation. She led Julian out through the crowd of reporters, shouting questions. Mr. Hargrove, did you really try to have someone killed? Is it true you've been laundering money? Do you regret what you did to that waitress? Julian said nothing. He just walked, head down, hands cuffed, while the world watched his fall. Outside, a black sedan waited. Mary opened the back door. Before Julian climbed in, he looked up and saw him. Terry Phillips, standing across the street, hands in pockets, watching. Their eyes met. Phillips didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply nodded once, an acknowledgement. Then he turned and walked away. Julian was pushed into the sedan, and the door slammed shut. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution presented financial records documenting $47 million in tax fraud. Testimony from 12 former employees about labor violations, security footage of bribes being paid to city officials, bank records proving money laundering through shell companies, video evidence of Julian assaulting Naomi, and recorded phone call of Julian ordering a hit on Terry Phillips. The defense had nothing. Julian's lawyers tried every tactic: procedural objections, character witnesses, claims of entrapment. Nothing worked. The evidence was overwhelming. On day 4 of testimony, Naomi took the stand. She wore a simple blue dress. Her hair had grown back slightly, a short, natural style that somehow made her look stronger. Ms. Winters, the prosecutor began gently, can you tell the jury what happened on the night of September 15th? Naomi took a deep breath. Then she spoke. She described the gala, the spill, Julian's rage, the clippers, the humiliation. But she didn't stop there. I want the jury to understand something, Naomi said, looking directly at them. That night wasn't an isolated incident. Julian Hargrove built his entire empire on treating people like they don't matter. Service workers, contractors, employees, anyone he considered beneath him. She pulled out a folder. I worked at Belmont Club for 2 years. During that time, I witnessed Mr. Hargrove's behavior repeatedly. He yelled at staff, refused to tip, threw food at servers, called us names. The prosecutor approached. You documented this? I did. Naomi opened the folder. Dates, times, witnesses. I never thought it would matter, but after what he did to me, I realized if I don't speak up, who will? The jury was riveted. Julian's lawyer objected multiple times, but the judge overruled him. When Naomi finished, She stepped down from the witness stand with her head high. As she passed Julian's table, she stopped. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your cruelty anymore." Then she walked out of the courtroom. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Julian with undisguised contempt. "Mr. Hargrove, in my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a comprehensive pattern of illegal and immoral behavior. You used your wealth as a weapon. You crushed anyone who challenged you. You believed money made you above the law." She paused. "It doesn't." Julian Hargrove was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. His assets were seized to pay restitution to victims. Hargrove Industries was dissolved, its holdings sold at auction. The highest bidder, a shell corporation owned by Terry Phillips, 6 months later. Naomi stood in front of a building in Queens. The sign above the door read, "Winters Worker Advocacy Center." It had been Julian's club, the Belmont Club. Phillips had bought it, renovated it, and given it to Naomi. Now it was a place where service industry workers could get legal help, report abuse, access resources, and find community. Sienna stood beside her, smiling. "Ready?" Naomi nodded. They opened the doors. 50 people waited inside. Workers who'd heard about the center, who needed help, who needed hope. Naomi addressed them, her voice steady and strong. "My name is Naomi Winters. 6 months ago, I was humiliated in front of hundreds of people by a man who thought I didn't matter. Today, I'm here to tell you, you matter. Your work matters. Your dignity matters. And if anyone tries to take that from you, we will fight back, together." Applause filled the room. That evening, Naomi returned to the penthouse she now shared openly with Phillips. He was in the kitchen, cooking. Something he did when he needed to think. "How was the opening?" he asked without turning around. "Perfect." Naomi wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Thank you for everything." Phillips turned, cupping her face in his hands. "You did this. You survived. You fought. You turned pain into purpose." "We did this," she corrected. "You showed me that power doesn't have to be cruel. It can be protective. It can be just." He kissed her forehead. Julian Hargrove believed cruelty was strength. He was wrong. Love is strength. Loyalty is strength. Protection is strength. Naomi smiled. "The scary mafia boss has gone soft. Only for you." They stood there in comfortable silence. Outside, the city glittered. A city where a waitress could become an advocate, where a billionaire could fall, where justice could prevail when the right people decided to fight for it. Naomi had been shaved, humiliated, and broken, but she'd risen stronger. And everyone who'd watched knew cruelty has consequences, especially when the person you hurt is loved by someone who refuses to let injustice stand. Detective Mary Bradford was promoted to captain. Rebecca Thorne won a Pulitzer for her investigative journalism. Julian Hargrove served his full 8-year sentence. When he was released, he was broke, disgraced, and alone. Naomi's center helped over 2,000 workers in its first year. And Terry Phillips? He continued running his empire, but now everyone knew one additional rule. Never, ever hurt what belongs to Phillips. Because he doesn't just remember. He makes sure the whole world remembers too. Did justice get served? Did this story keep you on the edge? Then smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because we have more powerful revenge stories coming that you will not want to miss. Share this with someone who loves karma stories. Let's grow this community together.